Welcome to Culture Conversations, Lessons in Leadership, where we bring together leaders, experts, and change makers to share the real lessons behind leadership, culture, and team success. I'm Denitresse Ferrell, your host, founder, and CEO of Culture Refinery, where we help organizations optimize the return on their most critical investment, their talent. And so today I'm excited to be joined by author Lucien, Vice President and Learning and Development, Vice President of Learning and Development. Let me make sure I get it right at JPMorgan Chase. Arthur has built a career developing high potential talent into high impact leaders, especially across technical sectors and global teams. He's helped shape leadership programs that go beyond training, but really focus on creating that measurable change in how people lead, collaborate, and grow. So I'm so excited to dig into what he's learned about building strong leaders, about developing high performing teams, and about creating cultures of opportunity and inclusion inside one of the world's most complex organizations. So let's get started. Welcome, Arthur.
It feels good to be here, and I will tell you, what an intro. I'm gonna have to go back and think about is that? I was like, what is she talking about? That's gonna be a great guest. I can't wait to hear it. And I'm like, oh, it's me.
It's you.
So
It's you.
thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Exactly. I'm so excited. So let's start with the personal, right?
Hmm.
Every leader has had that first role, the role that stretches you, teaches you probably more than you expected. So if you can go back to that first step into leadership, what was one behavior or mindset that you wish you would have shifted sooner?
Oh man, if we could do it again, right?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
there's there's a lot of moments, I think, where you have an opportunity to go in a different direction. I believe in fulcrum moments in your lives, right? Like everyone, especially when you're kind of starting out, are doing about the same kinds of things, and then a
Hmm.
moment will happen and then someone takes off and does extraordinary things. And I really believe that our ability to identify those moments as they're happening make the difference. And
Yeah.
so to go back to your question, I was in, man, my first job, I was in a management training program for a company, and I still didn't kind of get it, right? I had just gotten out of college. And I'm like, okay, I guess this is 13th grade. I guess I'll just do rotations, and nobody
Mhm.
really takes you seriously. And you start off really aggressive. I want to be the best, and I want to show that I'm committed to the organization. And then as you're faxing papers for the third week in a row, you're like, okay, yeah, maybe this isn't what I thought it would be. But it was in financial services, and this is in the summer of 2008,
Mhm.
which was an interesting time in that business. And so I remember the markets really starting to slide in the fall,
Mhm.
and I was client facing, and people were coming to talk to me, and they were losing their life savings by the hour.
Mhm.
And it was an extraordinary moment, I think, not just for me as a young professional, but I think for all of us.
Yeah.
And what do you say to someone who's losing their house by the end of the week? What do you say to someone who has to come out of retirement because they have no money left? What do you say to people who are worried about their children? And so
Mhm.
when you talk about roles that stretch you, I had to learn a lot really quickly at an early age about what empathy meant and the role of development. How am I going to be developed by this experience? As people look to me for leadership, uninterested if I actually have it or not, but needing it in that moment. And so that's, I mean, I can think of a bunch, but that's something that sticks out. It's having those conversations with people while they're in tears at my desk.
Yeah.
And then you just wait for the next person right after
Mhm.
them and you have a line, so it was really something. But that framed a lot about how I view development, both at the early career, mid-career, and more senior career levels, and interpersonal relationships and the way we build them. I can go
Oh,
on and on about that. It's funny. You tell me, I'm getting that 1,000-yard stare. I'm thinking about that moment. But yeah, that's what sticks out to me.
Oh my goodness, I remember that time. Like, I'm counting back and sort of reflecting the same on that time and how you had no choice but to rise. You had no
Yeah,
choice but to stretch and into, right, the shoes that you were forced to fill, right? Often before we were ready, before we were developed, you just had to step into it because there was no one else to do it, and you had to. And I love that call out of empathy. I think that it is such a critical competency that when we talk about leadership doesn't get mentioned enough. So I love that you call that out. So your perspective, right, on life, career, leadership today has been shaped, as all of us has, around years of experience. But early on, we usually we start with some assumptions, and they don't always hold up. But usually we go into these situations with some assumptions. I'm curious from your perspective, what is one commonly held belief about leadership that you found just doesn't serve people in the long run?
I can think of a bunch. Something that sticks out immediately to me is there's a complete misconception at every level and in most organizations that I've seen that a manager or a leader knows what to do with an upskilled employee. That if
Mhm.
somebody gets their graduate school degree or they go through some type of enrichment program or they build a new skill, we take for granted that that manager knows what to do.
Yeah.
And without, I think, being too hard on the person, I think it's a failure at the systemic level
Mhm. Mhm.
because we assume that because someone has a direct report, that they are qualified to have a direct report, that they know how to encourage and uplift and challenge their direct report, that they know how to adapt when circumstances change. And time again, I see that that gets skipped. And it's funny because it has a ripple effect. So the manager, the perceived leader, isn't necessarily empowered with the tools they need
Mhm.
for a functional change in competency for someone who reports to them or someone who looks to them for guidance. So they do the best they can in most cases. But often what that looks like is no organizational roadmap,
Mhm.
no systemic framework, just, hey, congratulations on getting your MBA. Your seat's here. Welcome back. Or how was the leadership conference? Or how was the program? Fantastic. How are you going to apply those skills? And you put all of the pressure on the person to now find the space to demonstrate their new competency in the absence of support. And on some levels, I don't even blame them as much because that's what we teach people with our current system in the United States of higher education. Kids go to school, they get mortgage level debt, and then we tell them to go with God. The loans will start in 90 days. And so there's all this intense pressure on the learner, or this intense pressure on the employee or the student to identify a path, navigate the path, and make the path worth it. And it's almost like everybody else gets off the hook. It's extraordinary. I have a bunch, but that's something that sticks out right away.
Whew, you are speaking my language. I often say, right, from the other side of that is that we often promote but don't prepare when it comes to new managers. And that's one of the spaces that we lean very heavily in here at Culture Refinery. How do we help new managers actually be prepared to be effective leaders? Because so many of us have had the experience of being led by someone who wasn't quite ready, who didn't have the skill set, the toolkit to lead effectively. So that is so powerful. You also touch on the challenge of integrating learning into your day to day. Like, we are in this consumption economy where we consume so much information. Everyone's going and getting this degree and this certification and this class, and it's more accessible, but more data, more knowledge without a clear path to how you apply it I mean, unless you're trying to be an encyclopedia, it doesn't really serve you that well, right?
Well,
So I
to your
love.
point, to underscore what you just said, there's this fantasy that people have that being good at your job is enough, and somebody somewhere will find you and give you the things you're looking for. And for the most part, I think early on people believe that. And as you mentioned, the booming microcert economy, which is booming right now, is evidence that that's just not true. And so learning and development often gets kind of convoluted because
Mhm.
leadership of organizations think it's a silver bullet, or that the learning in and of itself is the end. And it's really just the end of the beginning. Something I always ask, and I almost never get like the kind of answer I'm always looking for, is like, okay, someone is going to do a thing. I'm an organization, I run a talent dev program, or I run a top talent enrichment program, or I'm running a new hire program, or whatever. And I'll ask, hey, they do this program, and then what happens? Simple question. We in society, this isn't unique to any particular company. We in society are often not equipped to answer that question because we
Mhm.
haven't had the practice. You don't
Mhm.
even get the practice when you go to college. In undergrad, for those of us fortunate enough to go to undergraduate school. But what happens when you finish? Oh, well, you know what? Then you'll go do whatever you want to do. Like, so what happens is, I mean, and I see it with young people, but I see it with a lot of people that have kind of stalled out in their careers. So you think you're folks that are like mid to late 30s, the folks that are kind of done something long enough that they're really good at it, but not sure if that's what they want to do for the remainder of the career. You often don't see industry change, or you often don't see categoric change for folks after like their mid 40s, because they're kind of like, okay, whatever I'm doing, I'm going to be doing this.
Mhm.
I'm not saying it can't happen, but I'm saying most of the time it doesn't happen, even though ironically, most of the successful businesses that have been started in the last 3 years are from entrepreneurs that are in their early 50s, late 40s, early 50s. That's a separate conversation. But to go back to the point that I'm making, is like, because there's no ownership about what happens afterward, everyone's looking at each other to fulfill the promise that this is supposed to help me, or this is supposed to help you. Or if my company, if I have a company and I say, hey, you know what, I'm going to put you through an enrichment program because you're going to be better. Okay, great. But if I don't give you an opportunity to be better, or the platform to show that you're better, then you just kind of go back to work. You feel unfulfilled. I feel disappointed. And then either we exit from you or you exit from me. And then everyone walks away disappointed. So I think that comes up so often. And even the question, the one thing I say to everybody, every entrepreneur I talk to, is like, understand what comes next. Someone's going to do this thing. Fantastic. How are you delivering on that promise? What steps are you prepared to follow to show good faith investment? Maybe it looks like, maybe not necessarily guaranteeing mobility. We can't always do that, but maybe it
Mhm.
looks like fast tracking mobility. Maybe it looks like finding a way to give them exposure to demonstrate those new skills. Maybe it looks like mentorship programs that have a terminus and a promise of visibility. Like, it's something. And often those things tend to be missing. Does that answer
Yeah,
your question?
it does.
Okay.
There's multiple questions. It's right. You've got to apply it. You can't just be. I remember my early days of coaching. I would say that the old playbook, the old career playbook, what's been passed down from generations, hard work, head down, your work speaks for itself, and it doesn't. Your work doesn't speak for yourself, and there's two sides to that coin that you really illuminated so beautifully. One is on the institution, your leadership. I have to create a path and encourage that and open those pathways. But on the other side is, as an individual, I have to take agency and ownership of my steps. And where the path isn't created, isn't clear, then I got to go find, right? I have to go find I always say, find your fertile soil, right? If this soil isn't that, then go find your fertile soil, because at the end of the day, your life, your career is your responsibility. And yes, organizations are leaving so much on the table, because if as an organization, as a leadership team, we own that, we get so much out of that talent. That's that optimizing the return on talent piece that we're often talking about. So one of the things that I noticed as we were preparing for this conversation, right, is you're focused on how are we measuring the success of the learning, right, and being able to pull that into the conversation, because yeah, it could be really arbitrary. And one of the things that I always think about is, I think I mentioned already, we talk about how we consume so much, but how do you then apply it, right? And so um part of our process is, how do we get you past the learning to the application, to the integration, right? How do we embed it into your day to day? And so all of our programs are infused with not just learning and micro learning, but actual coaching and follow up, and we follow you through after the program is over. There's still sort of engagement after that. There's how do we engage not just the participant of the programs, but the managers of the program, so they have the coaching, they have visibility to, this is what we're covering this week or this module in this program. Here's how you can deepen the conversation. Here's what you could be looking for. Here's what this person is, looking for. It's the senior leadership buy-in, not just to fund the program, but to create those pathways, right? We're willing to fast track, we're willing to do these things. So I agree. I vehemently agree that sometimes we're doing just we're sounding pretty, but we're not doing anything. And that is something that is top of mind for me too. I always say I come to this business not from HR. I don't come to learning and development from an HR background nor an academic background. I'm the operator. I'm the leader in operations that saw all the stuff that y'all pushed down and saw why it didn't work, why I couldn't apply it, because I didn't have an ability to show my skill in my role, right? There were no opportunities for me to step in and demonstrate what I could do. And I also realized that sometimes we talk about optimizing talent, we say that to sort of most of our target is the business. But when we're talking to the actual leader, the individual, we use the term unleash genius, but it really is giving you the space to tap into the fullness of who you are, right? And and,
Yeah.
and for many of us, we haven't done that. We can't do that because we're stuck doing, we don't know, we're stuck with someone else's definition of success. We have allowed everyone for us to get good at some things, but the things that we're good at we don't actually want to do anymore, right? And so it makes it really
Yeah.
really hard for you to have the freedom to be your apps. Like, what are you here for? What's your purpose?
Yeah, and it's so fascinating you say that. You can't expect everybody to die for the cause, right? So I don't have illusions about some people just needing an opportunity to earn and provide for their families. So it doesn't have to be that. I think what's amiss often is employers are so far disconnected from motivations, either
Mhm.
through just structural disinterest or a lack of engagement. I talk to young professionals all the time. I'm often just kind of pulled into conversations with folks. I mean, I've been stopped at the grocery store a few times too. Like, you never know, right? So I'm always just kind of having conversations. And the first thing I always ask is like, what are you working on? And they'll mention their job function. I'm like, yeah,
Mhm.
cool. But like, what are you working on? What skill set do you want to have at the end of the year? And often, I don't think that gets thought about enough and talked about
Mhm.
enough. People just keep thinking, I want to do my job more.
Yeah.
I want to do my job more. And that's fine. And then someday when I'm ready, I'll take the next step to do the next logical thing. And so, in this focus on, I think it's like Men's Mental Health Month, actually, it's in this focus on like mental health. A lot of people talk about being stressed.
Yep.
And to me, it's wild because I can understand how they could be stressful because you're basically freestyling your life. I'm going to do whatever people recommend and hope that it works out. And there's like no plan. And so you're not even like in the game. You're not being intentional about your outcomes. Even something as simple as like, okay, between now and December, what's a new skill I want to have? Well, I don't know. Okay, well, what do you want to do for for a living? Like, I know you're doing something now, but what do you want to do long term? I don't know. Okay, well, have you thought about it? No. Okay, well, when are you going to think about it? Someday when I'm ready, I will move on and do another thing. But the secret is, as you know, someday never comes. Someday is not real. And so people live their life like it's practice. And then at some point the game will start and now you're like ready. I was just having a conversation 2 weeks ago about people's, for young people, their 20s are being called a lost decade, right? Or an extended adolescence, where people are still just kind of doing whatever. And relative to other generations, I think there's a lot of studies about how folks can be considered not quite as advanced professionally or personally as prior generations were. There's a lot of reasons for that. I don't want to get into that, but the reason I'm bringing that up is it's almost like for a lot of people, myself included, it took getting into your 30s to realize, okay, now I'm ready. Right now I'm ready. Now I know what I want to do, or now I'm ready to like start making progress. And I think the challenge for me is like that conversation was never really introduced earlier. And it's through nobody's fault, but I just think as a society, we never talk about it. It's always like, oh, go to school. And I was lucky to come from a two-parent household. I was lucky to have encouraging parents. And it was, okay, you go to school. Okay, cool. What's next? Then you go to high school. Cool. What's next? Then you go to college. Cool. What's next? Then they're like, well, what do you want to do? And I'm like, I have no experience making difficult decisions or important decisions. So of course I don't know what I want to do. So I do the first thing that comes along in this management training program. And I bring that up, not to get on my soapbox about that, but more so just to illustrate. So it's not surprising if we don't work those muscles, why when we talk to people in the learning and development space, or we talk to people that are feeling they're stalled out in their careers, they don't know what to do next. They have no experience answering that question. And I think that's a great opportunity for employers to take a step back and say, okay, what do we know about the people who work for us? And it doesn't have to be like, you don't have to be a psychologist, right? But it's worth understanding, okay, I know, for example, that you want to get into, let's say, a totally different segment, totally different space in 2 years. Well, I should partner with you. What skills do you need in that space? Well, I probably need skills in these 5 areas. Great. Let's work to develop those skills here in this job we're already in. And let me partner with you to make sure you're getting closer to your overall goal. And at least I know, even as an employer, if it's not with me forever, I have a runway for how long I need to develop talent to backfill.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's how you kind of solve that conversation on both ends.
That every time we go down the, not even a rabbit hole, because it was right on point, I start smiling back because you're speaking my language, right? And I feel like our experiences are even similar too. And so, here's what I heard and here's what I see, right? We have one of our signature programs is our Unleash Genius program. It's the name of it. It is a career and leadership development program. And unlike most of what I see in the marketplace, we start not talking about your career. It's a 6-module program. We stretch it over about 8 months, 6 to 8 months, depending on the organization we're doing it in. We don't start talking about your actual career, what you do at work, until module 3. The first 2 modules, we're talking about who you are, what's your why, what do you want to do with yourself? And most people don't know the answer to that question. And so we're giving tools, prompts, discussion, journaling, exercises, assessments, all sorts of things to help us dig in and not answer it, but get some insight, get some hints towards what's important to me, what's my why, what are my values, where are my strengths, what motivates me, what did I used to get excited about, what do people think about me, what do people say about me, what do people come to me for, right? We start to gather that type of information because we've not done it. And one of the things I always say, I was almost in my 40s when I figured out what I was supposed to be doing with my life. And it had been that question that held you up. Like, you're like, why do I not, everybody's doing this thing. They're doing what they're supposed to be doing. Why am I not doing what I'm supposed to be doing? What am I supposed to be doing with myself? This feels unfulfilling, uninspired, right? And I had the same thing, right? Growing up, two parent households, all the things, graduate, get good grades so you can get a scholarship.
Right.
Because it's two of us. We don't have no money, baby. Get good grades so you can get a scholarship, go to a good school, get a job so you can be independent. Like that was it. And I'm from the Maryland area, so it was get a good government job, right? That's
Mm.
sort of the messaging. Get a good, stable government job, right? And so what I often say, especially if you're thinking about younger generations, is that our ability to dream and imagine what we want out of life is influenced by what we've seen. And so if you've never seen someone who is, I go back to this is your interview. I'm gonna stop talking in a second. I go back to how I determined my undergrad major.
Mm.
So I went to undergrad, and my first thought was I wanted to be a doctor. And then I was very disappointed in biology. I did not like it at all. And so I was like, hey, we need to change it. What are y'all majoring in? Oh, accounting is a good field. Okay, let me go change my major to accounting. Didn't like it. T charts made no sense to me.
Mm.
And I happened to watch the movie How Stella Got Her Groove Back
Sure.
with my friends. I watched How Stella Got Her Groove Back with my friends, and there were some upperclassmen. I said, hey, y'all, what do y'all think she does?
Yeah.
What do you think Stella does? Oh, something in finance. She's either investment banker or investment manager, something in finance. I said, say less. And then they said, well, why? Denny, I said, because Stella seems like she's working with numbers. I'm good with numbers. She, seems like she's got this, high profile, high impact role, and she's making good money because how else could she go away on vacation to Jamaica for 30 whole days and take her son and her niece and come back and bring this whole man? So anyway, needless to
Yeah,
say,
I was gonna say I thought this was going to like you're also interested in Tay Diggs, but like that I hear
no,
what you're
no,
saying.
no. No. The
I
man was
understand. I
irrelevant. It
understand.
was the fact that she could afford to take care of him. So I was like, okay, we're going to major in finance. So I
Yeah,
majored in finance, right? And that was it. And so what that gave me is that our dreams are so nearsighted, and so the same way that they're corrective lenses for your physical eyes, they're corrective lenses for your dream vision. And I say that's access and exposure. I was exposed to, oh, there's another industry out there that I didn't know anything about where you can make some money, as right? Let me go try
for
it.
sure. For sure. And first of all, I'm a huge like cinephile. So like I've seen just about every movie after 1976. Like before that I spot check movies for like the most I've seen just about every movie. So that
Wow.
that movie in particular is funny to me. Because like you said, you never really get the answer what Stella does. You just know Stella's paid and
Stella's
Stella's
got the
fine,
money, and there's
and
money.
Stella kind of writes her own ticket, right? So so you totally get that. Um, it's funny because I think early on in the career journey, it is still prescriptive because you're still kind of, we'll say, inexperienced in
Mhm.
making important decisions, right? Some more than others, but largely inexperienced. So you start doing what somebody tells you to do because you're experimenting. I think the experimentation early on, in many cases, never gets replaced. And so what happens is you start doing a thing, and then you're doing the thing. Then in some cases you get good at the thing, and then it's just a thing you do, and that's it. And we never go back to you talked about finding your why, right? You
Mhm.
never go back to, okay, now that you have some experience under your belt, what are you looking to do? And I was talking to my wife about this the other day. She's launching her business. This is will be her eighth business, but she's launching this business next month. And prior to that, I mean, she has an incredible background. I mean, she's extraordinary. But prior to that, she was like a product owner at a major tech company, done a lot of things, was in the Marine Corps. And she has this really eclectic background, right? Started
Mhm.
off in politics and, did the Marine Corps, worked in tech, done all these other things, had a shoe company, had a makeup company, and now she's launching a head spa company that specializes in textured hair because apparently nobody does that. So she's like the only person. Um, but this exact conversation, right? Here, spoiler alert, like we're both like 40. And she's like, I just feel like I'm starting so late, like on my calling. And it goes back to kind of my comment about like sometimes we don't go back to experimenting or we never pursue our why again, we just kind of
Mhm.
have it. And some people even go so far as to write that process off as like childish, or, oh, you're getting older, you don't have time to like search for what you want to do, you got to make decisions now. And I look at our daughters and I just think like we owe it to them to be happy
Yeah.
daily.
Yeah.
And this idea that you have to choose your career or your mental health and happiness, that's it's something that's made up. And I
Mhm.
think it gets peddled so often that we just take for granted it's true, when nothing can be further from the truth. Everyone that I know excels at the things they love because they love those things, because they would do them for free. Like here, you and I are talking about um, all kinds of things about Stella and Tay Diggs, right? But the point that I'm making is like you and I are talking about really, I think, just what makes people special,
Yep.
and then remembering that. And I would do that anyway. I happen to be paid for it, but I would do it anyway because I love to do it. So I just think there's a lot there. I think you're cooking with some heat there. I think you got some heat there.
When you talk about like when you talked about the experimentation, I agree. Like I also think that like some of the younger generation that's coming into the workforce right now, one of the things why it may seem that they don't have it as together as we had it before is I think they're being more intentional about what they're trying to experience. There's other factors in there, but one of those
Oh yeah.
factors, I think they're being more intentional about what do I actually want this. I don't, y'all weren't happy with the thing that you're selling me on.
Right.
Why do I want the thing that's making you miserable? Let me take my time. And when we get to the experimentation, I think what some of us are missing is when I think about experimentation, I think about sort of the scientific method and like, okay, my hypothesis is this and the experiment tells me this, but we don't come back and say, what did I learn? What did it tell me? And
There's
that
there's no
reflection,
retrospective.
interrogation, yes, that's where the answers are. And when I'm working with, because what happens more often than not, before I started the broader B2B company, Culture Refining, when I was just coaching leaders, it was, I'm successful. I've arrived. I've checked all the boxes. And now here I am, 40, 45, 35. I'm miserable. I'm great
Yeah.
at this. I'm like super successful and so unfulfilled and uninspired. And I pull them all the way back. Let's start with who you are and what you want and what lights you up. And if you could do anything, but I know you still got to make money. So if you could do anything while making money, what's that like? And then we back.
Yeah. I mean, to your point, if my life is so great, why am I the only one not having fun? Right? Like there's a lot there. And I just want to shout out Gen Z and Gen Alpha really quickly because I believe they really get a bad rap.
Mm,
I talk to a lot of my peers, and and like anything else, I think there's some idiosyncratic things that are different, right? But for the most part, when I think about their life experience, I can speak for the United States specifically.
mhm,
You come into a world that is bathed in social media, so privacy. Every person you see is an ad hoc cameraman, right? y- y- you're you're bathed in this technology that we're just now starting to understand what the mental
mhm,
impact is,
mhm,
right? You are born into the war on terror. You go through the greatest recession in 80 years before you're 10, right? Or in some cases before you're a teenager. You go through SARS, swine flu. Um, you go through multiple school shootings became a normative thing. So you're going through um, these active shooter drills, which is I can't even imagine what it would be like to have to pretend to be dead in case someone I didn't know tried to kill me at school every year. But they go through this experience and then they uh, go to college, or at least the ones that have graduated college, they go to college and then you have COVID. And then you come out of college and you go through this period of, um, I would argue, excessive economic correction, where you see these Hunger Games style layoffs from Google and other fangs. turning off badges and stuff. And then we come to these people who've gone through these things and we say, how come you don't work harder? How
Hmm.
come you're not committed to what we're doing? And I just think it's so unfair to look at their specific journey and to write it off as they must not be engaged because they're lazy, or
Yeah.
they must not be into it because they don't know what it's like to work hard. I don't know. Maybe they're just seeing the angles. I think what you said is spot on. I think intentionality is a trait that I think this generation is more in touch with than any before it in recent memory. And I just want to shout them out because I really feel like young people really just get a bad rap
Yeah.
sometimes. And I'm not blanket excusing. I mean, there is some stuff that's kind of crazy, right? Don't get me wrong. But I do say that to say, like, I admire, I think, the courage they have to be willing to separate from those experiences. Because to your point, and, I'm not sure what I think we're a similar generation bracket. I know we were always afraid about quitting our job. What if we can't find another one? What
Hmm.
if
Hmm.
what if we just quit this because we're unhappy and now we're not making any money? Or what if somebody doesn't think highly of me if I don't work hard? I mean, I remember I worked a job and I got a certificate for attendance. Okay. So they didn't pay me, but they gave me the certificate. All right. Because I was there. I think I had taken no days off for like 3 years.
Wow.
And I was like, yeah, I want to show them I'm committed to the cause. So I get this certificate. They shout me out on Thursday and I get laid off on Monday the following week. And one of the presenters had the conversation with me. And I just sat there thinking about, as I'm processing all the missed birthdays,
Hmm.
the wedding receptions, the graduation parties, the life experience moments that I didn't get to have because I wanted to prove that I was committed. So I was
Yeah.
martyring myself instead of taking care of my well-being. And like,
Hmm.
look, sometimes those things will happen and it's fair, it's unfair, it's the way the world is. But I think a lot about like, had I been more intentional as some of these later generations are, even if I went through that experience all over again, and I'm glad I did because it was formative for me. But even if I went through that experience all over again, I'd have the memories to go with it. I wouldn't lose some of those things that I now have to sometimes I sit and wonder, like, man, I really wish I went to my friend's graduation, or I
Hmm.
really wish I went to that wedding instead of working. But we're all over the place.
Arthur, we zigzagged for sure, but this has been so engaging, and it all came. So it brings me back to this, right? Our conversations bring me back to this notion around how then do we effectively, what do we need to effectively lead the next generation for the breakthroughs that we need, right? Because what we know is that our existing leadership and existing leadership development, as it's traditionally been done, isn't arming us, isn't preparing us to effectively navigate these very unprecedented times that we're all facing. And so, what's missing? How do we do it?
We talked about it at the top of the hour, right? Empathy.
Hmm.
I I am very fortunate in my journey. I run the preeminent technology talent development program for my firm for the world, and I'm so humbled to do that. But something we focus on in the program is empathy. And when I talk to graduates and we talk about core skills that they were imbued with throughout the course of their time in the program, they lead with communication and empathy over the technical skills
Yep.
that they get. They start with those things. And so when you say what's needed from leadership, and I say empathy, I mean that. And there's a way to capture that. It's not just listening to somebody or pretending to be interested in something deeply personal to them. But what empathy does look like is it looks like controlling the user journey when they go through these talent dev programs. It looks like controlling onboarding to make sure that onboarding is engaging and effective. It looks like controlling and taking ownership of attrition. So if a given manager has a lot of attrition over a short time interval, going back with that manager and taking a look. I know for me, like when I talk to folks or I'm coaching, the first thing I ask is, oh, yeah, I'm down 2 people this year. I'm like, oh, okay, well, what were you working on with them before they left? They don't know
Mhm.
the answer, then the answer is probably nothing. So if you didn't know that this person wasn't happy, what else don't you know about your business? Like there are functional things that you can do to generate empathy in the aggregate. It doesn't just have to look like, so tell me about your sister, right? I think you should ask those questions, but it doesn't have to look like that. What empathy looks like is taking ownership of what it's like to sit in that chair, what it's like to make sure that they are empowered with access to resources, make sure that they're connected with mentors, right? People who are familiar with their career journey. Make
Yeah.
sure that there is system check-ins from senior leadership, not just, and granted, depending on the size of the company, you can't do a whole lot, but everyone, I think if your company is less than 500 people, should have a conversation with the CEO at least once a year, just directly, even if it's 15 minutes. Like, but let them know, hey, do you have a question or a comment or a problem or something? I do care to hear what you're going to say.
Mhm.
I think if you lead with empathy, I think everything else works. I mean, we're going through a renaissance right now in
Mhm.
technology in my space with AI. Everyone talks about it.
Mhm.
Not everyone knows what it means. We just, a lot of people are still using ChatGPT as a WordPress, right?
Yeah.
There are, the last time we were in this situation was 1993, right? The launch of the internet.
Mhm.
That was the last time we had something that changed everything about how you do everything.
Mhm.
And so it's an extraordinary time right now where our horizons are limited by the scope of our imagination only.
Yeah. Yes.
And in that, there's a lot of anxiety. You saw multiple companies who felt that having less employees and more engagement with large language models is the right thing to do, and to be unapologetic about that. You have companies who lean fully into that, then had to lean back into rehiring more people because they just weren't getting the things that they needed. The point that I'm making is there's a lot of anxiety and uncertainty for all of us.
Mhm.
And I think the biggest tool is having empathy. If I can be empathetic about what you're going through, and even if you're scared, admitting that I'm scared too, I
Yeah.
think it goes a long way, and it helps us as we design the ways that our employees engage with each other. And the fact is, and I'll end that thought with this: you can't be brave unless you're afraid.
Powerful, so powerful. And I love this focus on empathy. And as we were thinking about sort of what's it take for us to lead in this age and these times and these dynamics with these generations that we're all everything is unprecedented. Like there's not one thing, it's the technology, the generations, everything is unprecedented. And one of the things that stands out for me is that the world and organizations need leadership, true leadership more than ever. And there is a huge portion in the middle, huge set of middle managers who have the most impact, but have not actually been prepared to do that. They need more empathy. They need more self awareness. They need to understand how better to build individual relationships instead of thinking they can do a peanut butter spread and just manage the whole team in this way, right? It doesn't work that way. They need to build more adaptability and agility. They need to be able to think more strategically beyond just what's happening in their small corner and space of the world. It's one of the things that we focus on in our Cultivate Leaders Ready to Lead program, right? Going from the inside out, we really are very intentional about preparing, not the technical side, because you're going to get the technical stuff somewhere else, but what's it take to really lead and have impact, starting with yourself.
Yeah. If you want to change your culture, and everyone talks a lot about culture, but not everybody means it. And this
Mhm.
goes back to what we were saying before, right? About optimizing.
Mhm.
There's a whole lot of corporate word salad that people like.
Mhm.
If you want to change your culture, you have to create equatorial pressure,
Mhm.
because your CEO, your senior leaders can say what's important, And you can put your junior people through training and share, these are our values and what we're up to. But those middle managers you described, the CEO minus 3 to 4, or the employee plus 1 or 2, they're the ones that control how your time is spent. They're the ones that have been around long enough, been through 2008, been through a few layoffs, in some cases a little jaded. They're the ones you have to win over, because them specifically, they are your culture carriers,
They
more
are.
so than anyone else. Because in some cases, C-suite is just a little too far removed from what's happening on the ground. And for new joiners, sometimes you might be too junior in your career or too junior in your status to really make some major cultural change. Not that you can't, but if you want to win people over, the culture is in the equatorial pressure. It's
Yeah.
those people. That's who you got to win over.
That's exactly what it is, right? I would say the magic is in the middle. The magic is absolutely in the middle. Listen, powerful. We've talked about all the things. We've talked about movies. We've talked about the upcoming generations. We've talked about empathy and leadership, the gaps in learning and development and leadership development in large organizations. We've talked on AI, and we've talked, okay. And this has been such a rich conversation. But let's close with a little bit of legacy here. You've coached, you've developed so many leaders. If you had to leave us with one lasting lesson, what's one piece of advice that you would hope that folks watching this carry with them no matter where they go?
Yeah. What I would say is there's a difference between how you think you're experienced and how you're actually experienced.
Mm.
And I believe that all of us are impact people. There's somebody who remembers the things that you say. And sometimes it's a lot of people, sometimes it's people close to you, but there are somebody who remembers the things that you say. And so what that means is there's a difference that only you can make, not just in your organization, but in the people around you. And just remember that, because if you do, you remember that you're extraordinary.
Mm.
And that's where the magic starts. It's amazing. And as I think about people that feel stuck in their career, I always just kind of share, tomorrows are so full of promise, and just because you were a thing yesterday doesn't mean you have to be that thing today. It's the greatest gift we have.
Yeah. Oh, I love this so much. Thank you so much, Arthur, for being here today, sharing your insights, sharing your perspective, giving us your time. Such lasting foods for thought and such great, rich conversation. So I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you for having me. This is fun.
Let me do my little wrap up and then I will let you go. Again, thank you, Arthur, for being here today, sharing such great insight and perspective. At Culture Refinery, we believe that great leaders aren't born, they're built. And that happens through intention, learning, and refining your leadership every step of the way. So, friends, until next time, keep leading boldly, keep investing in your people, and keep refining your own leadership. Thank you.
Okay.